Hey everyone, hopefully you're having a good day. My name's Andy. My channel's Finding Value. Again, I'm going to go over some articles I've been reading and seeing. A lot of people are getting pretty bullish on oil. That's usually when things pull back. We're probably getting close to maybe a pullback, but again, it's tough to say. I'm just using the sentiment. We do have tight or tighter inventories. And I'm going to go over a couple of articles that I've been reading, give you my opinion. So here we go. It says, will $100 oil finally bring about demand destruction? Brent hit $90 per barrel last week, and plenty of banks and oil majors now believe we will see $100 oil this year. If oil does continue to climb, demand growth will likely slow and central banks may hike interest rates more aggressively. Predictions of oil demand destruction at $80 never materialized, and gasoline consumption in the U.S. isn't slowing down. But that may soon change. So, in my opinion, as long as money's coming into the system, prices will remain elevated. If the dollar starts to drop, which it's starting to pull on back here, it's pulling back today a good amount. Today is 2/1/2022. We could see continued price increases because if the dollar goes down, well, all these commodities go up in price. So this is being driven a little bit by supply and demand. We can see it in the ratios compressing, but it's also being driven by inflation. So it's that combination. I don't know of a time in history where oil has gone up strictly off supply and demand without the inflation component. And I'm talking mainly about all these commodities. These commodities are going up in tandem or together. And I've talked about this before. I call it the financialization of everything, which means everything is moving based off of money flows. Everything is highly correlated and tied to money flows, the dollar, and the 10-year yield. Otherwise, you'd see these commodities start to trade quite differently. But it seems like they're all interconnected. And same even with some of the stocks. Sometimes the stock market is very interconnected with the commodity market based off of money flows and leverage in the system. So looking at this, we've got the oil rally pushes U.S. gasoline prices up for the fifth week in a row. It says the price of oil pushed into territory unseen in over 7 years as WTI crude hit $88 per barrel, which continues to drag gasoline prices higher. With continued concerns over geopolitical tensions and crude oil supply, the small yet noticeable increases are likely to continue. The only factor keeping gas prices from rising more substantially is that gasoline demand remains low as winter storms keep motorists closer to home. Once the weather starts to turn and warm gradually, we'll lose the only restraint to larger price increases. So, obviously, when we come to spring and summer months, that's when people start to travel more. Kids get out of school, and right now, in this person's opinion, the only thing keeping everything kind of low at the moment is winter. And when that winter releases, and it does the same for me, I use a lot more. I'll say I use a lot more gasoline in the spring and summer as I take out my other cars as well, and I use a lot more. It's not even close. In the winter, I barely use any. I mean, I don't really go too much of anywhere. So I would agree with that statement. It says U.S. natural gas inventories drop below the 5-year average again. However than usual, temperatures in early January pushed demand higher, and high liquefied natural gas exports also contributed to a tighter market in recent weeks. So we're just below the 5-year average. Record high LNG exports limited gains in U.S. natural gas inventories. So our inventory really isn't getting, it's not going up because of LNG exports. And we're just below the average. In particular, inventories in Europe remain much lower than the 5-year average and contributed to increased demand for LNG. We've got a pretty cold weather coming up the next week, at least here, and I think all of the southern kind of areas. So we're probably going to eat through some natural gas. I know when I visited back to Minnesota, it was really cold up there when I was up there. So yeah, January was pretty dang cold, that's for sure. And I think we're going to continue the cold weather here in the short term. Here it says $90 of oil is only the beginning. The current move in oil prices is largely attributed to geopolitical risk. The next major move in oil could be triggered if inventories fall to critical levels. Wall Street's consensus seems to be that Brent will reach $100 by the summer. The oil market is heading for simultaneously low inventories, low spare capacity, and still low investment. Summing up the situation quite nicely. In this situation, $90 for a barrel of Brent may be just the beginning. Yay. If you guys are oil investors. I mean, everybody else probably is dreading higher gasoline costs, but I don't use that much in its entirety for gas. So NATO worries about Europe's gas supply strategy. It says, we are concerned about the energy situation in Europe because it demonstrates the vulnerability of being too dependent on one supplier of natural gas. And that's the reason why NATO allies agree that we need to work and focus on diversification of supplies. Or maybe that their strategy is just horrible, but that's just me. It says the offshore wind boom is just getting started. We've got wind power is finally gaining traction in America's energy mix. The Biden administration is planning to hold the largest ever offshore wind leases in U.S. history. As the race to cut emissions heats up, wind power stocks are likely to see some positive gains in the coming months. Now, when people think of the offshore wind boom, they think of wind companies. My head, when I think of windshore boom, I go straight to the commodities. It says the minerals required for green energy technology. This is solar here, this is wind, and this is the electric vehicle storage. And the wind, they've got rare earths. We also have electric vehicle energy storage. They've got rare earths. And I like rare earths. That's where my head is kind of at. They all have copper in all these, copper. They've got cobalt in some of these, cobalt. But the ones that draw me are rare earths, nickel, copper. Copper's over here. I do like silver, which is here. But those are the ones that I do. And when I think of this stuff, I go directly to the minerals. I think that we are going to strain the minerals on this earth. I think we're going to get into some shortages and whatnot. And then eventually, I think it's going to get very hard to get minerals out of the ground. One good strategy is to buy the commodity directly and not worry about all of the ESG political risks and all of the problems with getting it, taxes. So owning the physical metal outright, like silver and platinum, I think is a really good bet. And I think owning some of the companies is good. I just think that the companies they're gonna see an environment if we have more difficulty getting this stuff out of the ground, if we run into larger shortages in the future than what we have in the past, if prices go up more than what we think, if we have an energy crisis where energy becomes a lot more expensive, these guys have not demonstrated that they are actually reducing the cost of energy. They have actually increased the cost of energy and have been an absolute horror show for anyone who's adopted a large amount of renewables. Why is that? Because you have to build double the infrastructure or more. So if someone says, well, we can generate electricity through solar at this very cheap amount, the question then becomes, well, how much solar do you need to build in order to have a steady amount of energy? If you have 1 megawatt of demand, do you have to build 4 or 5 and then have no energy storage? You also have to build the natural gas plant to buffer when it's not working. So I don't know. I feel like we're just throwing minerals away. That's kind of how I feel. It's like we're just throwing minerals away at this stuff, and we're not actually getting anything positive out of it. We're not actually reducing emissions. And honestly, guys, we're going to have to emit or pollute at some point because we've got a lot of people on this earth, and fossil fuels aren't going to go away, in my opinion. And if they're going to try to yank all of these minerals out of the ground that are behind me, it's going to take a whole bunch of coal. It's going to take a whole bunch of oil. It's going to take a whole bunch of that stuff. And if we dump it into something that's not really worthwhile, then why do it? We'd be much better off diving all of our efforts into efficiency. Problem is, you get more efficiency, it becomes more affordable, and more people will use more energy. It just keeps going up. It's a circular loop. And if that's the case, I mean, do you really think we're going to put solar panels on every person's house? I don't think we have that amount of, I don't know. I mean, that's kind of where my head is. Scrolling on down here, it says the IEA warns looming critical minerals shortage could derail the energy transition. That was in 2021. And I was looking at this article here. It says every American born will need 2.96 million pounds of minerals, metals, and fuels in their lifetime. And I just was looking at this like, holy moly, this is a lot of stuff. Every American born will need 2,070 pounds of aluminum. Wow. Look at how much coal. 223,973 pounds of coal. 11,379 pounds of clays. 17,068 pounds of iron ore. 776 pounds of lead. It's a lot of salt. We must eat a lot of salt, guys. Phosphate rocks, stone, sand, and gravel, 1.32 million pounds per American. 828 pounds of copper, 7.67 million cubic feet of natural gas, 445 pounds of zinc, lots of cement, 1.51 troy ounces of gold. Nice. Petroleum, 65,170 gallons, and 54,000 of other minerals and metals. I just thought it was interesting because if this is tied to every single American, then I would assume if you have the population increase that this will increase in its usage. And if you look at other countries, I mean, I'm sure they're not even close to this in terms of the consumption. What do you think that's going to do if everyone else, all those billions of other people, start increasing their usage of all these other minerals? I mean, I'm sure we have a lot on this earth, but that's a lot of mineral use and coal and everything. And as people adopt this and become wealthier, I mean, obviously this goes up. It's not going to go down. And it seems like technology allows things to be more efficient. More efficient, you can look at it from two perspectives. Efficiency drives, we'll call it productivity. Being more productive means you're going to produce and extract more minerals faster. So I just see these numbers going up, not down. So I'll end it there. Give you guys thumbs up for the content, guys. Give me subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And thank you for listening. This is Finding Value.